First, let's start here.
Deserve 9/11, dude. It. I'm saying it.
It will inevitably turn Israel into a nation that is entirely comprised of messianic, inbred, ultra-Orthodox psychopaths with a nuclear arsenal. Mao Zedong is a facts, by the way. Again, this is so funny. Like it's really funny that these guys will clip this and be like, see, look at how frustrating this is. It's like, yeah, you should hear what the more liberal Ashkenazi Jews have to say about where Israel is headed. What, I can't make a fucking assessment about where Israel is headed, given its like demographic increases exclusively coming from some of the most far right elements in Israeli society? Yeah. That's what this argument is, and it's where Israel is headed. What, am I not supposed to tell you the truth? I don't give a shit. Does this fake outrage even work? No, it doesn't. It's just like it's unbelievably silly. Like what I'm referencing is that Israel is inevitably going to turn into a country run exclusively by Itamar Ben-Gvir's and Bezalel Smotrich's, right? That's it. Which is exactly what's going on. And that's a real concern, even in Israeli society broadly. Whether we give a shit about what liberal Zionists, whether we give a shit about what liberal Zionists are concerned with or not, there's a separate demographic concern amongst liberal Zionists in Israel, amongst the more liberal elements that want to maintain a close relationship with the West. And that is the fear that they're being outbred. There's two different demographic concerns in Israel, broadly speaking. One is the non-Jew population, the non-Jewish population potentially outbreeding the Jewish population, which is not that big of a concern for Israeli society broadly, because the Orthodox population, the ultra-Orthodox population are actually keeping the Israeli demographic concerns at bay, because they oftentimes will have a lot of children, right? But this presents a unique demographic concern for some of the more liberal elements in Israeli society, because a lot of these guys are very right-wing. Okay? That's it. So while Israel has taken the initiative to ensure, and this is eugenics for the most part, let's be real, but while Israel has taken the initiative to try to stave off some of these demographic concerns coming from the Arab population, the other side of the story is something that they haven't been able to deal with at all, which is that the Israeli demographic replacement is not actually coming from the non-Jews that live in Israel or live outside of Israel but have a right to return technically, but it's actually coming from the replacement coming from West Bank settlers for the most part, ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox Jewish sects that tend to be far more right-wing. Now, there's obviously no monolithic understanding of any religious entity in this country or in all countries. So obviously there's some ultra-Orthodox that are, anti-Zionist as well. But ultimately, these are more fundamentalist sects of this same religion. And, they are going to be the only generation, like the next generation is going to be entirely comprised or overwhelmingly comprised of more far-right elements in Israeli society. We've already seen the Israeli politics change as a consequence of this. When you look at the when you look at the youth vote in Israel, the youth vote is actually further to the right than the elderly vote. It's unlike anything else. It's unlike any other country. If you look at the youth vote in Israel, the youth actually vote overwhelmingly in favor of Itamar Ben-Gvir over Bezalel Smotrich, for example. There's this distinction between the two because they think Bezalel Smotrich is not radical enough. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, that's what my reference was to Israeli society and the demographic changes that are taking place in Israeli society.
Orthodox psychopaths with a nuclear arsenal. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world. I finally framed the Cutie Cinderella newspaper from 9/11, the morning of 9/12, the newspaper right there.
That is controversial and far-left streamer Hasan Piker, who has built a platform on anti-American, anti-Israel rhetoric and has amassed a massive following in doing so. But who is Hasan Piker and how did he get so much influence? Let's take a look. Hasan Piker is born in New Jersey to Turkish.
This is crazy. They dedicated the power wall. They dedicated the power wall to my rise into power, like I'm a fucking faraway dictator, okay, in a Marxist-Leninist party that seized power over with like military means or something. Like we did a coup d'etat and we took over, and I run Burkina Faso or something. Like what the fuck? I am an American Twitch streamer, okay? I'm not running for office. I'm just an American Twitch streamer who has a political perspective that some, especially in the halls of power, find to be threatening, okay? And it's understandable that they consider it to be threatening because they're not exactly up to share any of that power, any of those resources. They want to continue to consolidate, okay? So there is a threat to them. And if you are a servant of capital, like Fox News is, like many in mainstream, in many of our mainstream outlets are, of course, you find this to be a significant threat, a real existential danger. I don't think it has to be that way. But if you're wondering why this is happening, if you're wondering why Fox News is covering me like this while I'm gone, well, there's a reason for it. It's because their bosses and their bosses' bosses, I guess, find the level of influence that I have in American politics to be an ever-present danger to their, profit margins, of course. But it is very funny.
Parents, but raised in Istanbul. He has family ties. You'll recognize this guy. He entered political media as the Young Turks co-founder's nephew. That's Cenk Uygur, who you remember very much following in the footsteps.
Uygur.
Hasan Piker starts building an online empire, turning his daily stream that everybody from Rokana to Abdul El-Sayed wants to be on, AOC, and he turned these live streams into an audience of 10 million followers. Part of why he is so front and center as a voice of young Democrats. His political access with major progressive stars appear on his show. They're literally it's like Joe Rogan trying to get on his show if you are a far left progressive Democrat. His radical record, though, cannot be denied. He's called religious Jews inbred, defended Hamas, continues to do that, and apologized after saying that America deserved 9/11. In the latest firestorm, addressed college Democrats in a Mao-style suit. Look at that. And it's interesting, guys.
How is that? He went from implying that I appreciated 9/11 to, and he wore a suit, and it's fucked up. What a high note to end it on, man.
Because just think the list of pro-America conservative speakers that have been booted from college campuses across the country is too long to list. It would take a half an hour to lay them out. And yet here, college Democrats want this highly controversial anti-American, anti-Semitic person to address them.
Well, so how did Hasan Piker become a leading voice for young liberals? Well, our next guest is a young Democrat.
That's what Katie
who's calling on his generation for platforming Piker. He says that it is reprehensible. He's also the president of Young Democrats of Massachusetts. Jack Perenick joins.
There's something really funny about this because I have no idea who this guy is, and I assume this guy's not even like part of the College Democrats of America. This is like an entirely separate group, right? I don't know who this guy is. But it is very funny that he's just like going on fascist news, going on the reactionary MAGA propaganda apparatus to disavow his left flank. Okay. I mean, sure. He's a DGG guy. Awesome. Great. Who cares? You guys have to understand something. Okay. Young Democrats of America is different than the college Democrats of America, first of all. Young Democrats are part of the DNC. They're funded by the Democratic Party. So is the college Democrats, even though they're not very well funded by the DNC. But what you have to remember, it doesn't even matter that this guy is a orbiter of a sex pest or anything like that. I don't even give a shit about the DGG sex pestiny affiliations. What he's doing here is going on Fox News as the face of a young Democratic Party organization, a part of the DNC apparatus, to attack their left flank. You're never supposed to do this, okay? You're not supposed to do this. You should, under no circumstances, find yourself, especially if you feel like you want to have a future in the Democratic Party, or if you want to have a future in any kind of opposition party, you should never genuflect to MAGA. You should never cede on their framing, your opposition's framing in general. You should never turn around and collaborate with them. You should not do that at all. As a matter of fact, one of the few people that does this consistently is John Fetterman. You don't want to be in the ranks with John Fetterman, especially if you feel like you have a future in the Democratic Party. Okay?
Us now. Jack, welcome to the show. So you say that young Democrats should be careful about, as you call it, platforming Hasan Piker, inviting him to universities. Why do you say that? Or should we have more open discussion and on both sides? Or you're saying he shouldn't be allowed on campus?
Well, I totally believe in going places where you have to talk to people that don't necessarily think the way that you do. That's why I'm here on Fox News this morning. But I think the most important thing to understand about Hasan Piker is that he is someone who is just totally reprehensible. But he does have this large following. And I think one of the most important things that Democrats can do, go out there, talk to his followers, talk to the people who are disaffected with both parties and are listening to him. But platforming him, I think, was something that was almost immediately met with severe backlash.
Why do you think he's popular, Jack?
There's a lot of people right now who don't feel comfortable embracing either party establishment, and we see that on the left and the right. I think Hasan Piker sounds a lot more like radical figures on the right, like Nick Fuentes, than he does like a lot of Democrats. And I think he said it best himself. You know, he came to this convention to speak and used half of his time defending why almost everyone hates him, and the other half of his time.
This doesn't make sense. You can't, on the one hand, say I'm unbelievably popular and I've been able to capture the attention of a lot of disillusioned young people that do not like either party, and then turn around and say everybody hates him, actually. Like, which is it? Do I hold the levers of power? Am I this unfathomably popular person? Or am I a guy that everybody hates? It doesn't really make sense. There are this is I would say this is the last gasp of a dying movement in general. Like, liberalism is cratering in support, in popularity. It's been the lay of the land for almost the past century, right? And that's part of the reason why it's kind of falling apart. The reason why it's kind of falling apart is because people understandably attribute all of the current struggles that they're experiencing back to liberalism, because liberalism has been the monoculture. Liberal capitalism has also been the only game in town. So even if people don't have the political education to fully comprehend they might personally not be liberals. They might be something a little bit more radical, quote unquote radical or whatever. It doesn't really matter. They just look at it and they go, this is the establishment. The establishment has not delivered for me. May have even voted for an anti-establishment candidate in the form of Donald Trump to break this duopoly with the false assumption that Donald Trump was going to be different. And my point always has been that there is a collaborative effort in certain instances between some in the establishment on the Democratic Party and the establishment on the Republican Party. This is proof in the pudding. This basically proves the argument. When you go on Fox News to attack your left flank and say, oh, his politics are odious, he's very popular, but also very, very unpopular at the same time, and we should listen to him, we should talk to his audience, but we shouldn't actually platform him, you're not making a coherent through line. You don't have a coherent through line in your ideology. It's just simply attack the left flank, and you will go to unbelievable lengths to do so, including directly collaborating with the fascist, reactionary, MAGA, Trump news outlet. You are now going on the same news outlet that defends the Epstein class. You're going on the same news outlet that defends robbing people of their health care, that defends going to war, endless wars. All of a sudden, you find yourself aligned with some truly toxic, truly odious people and some really reactionary politics. And that's the issue, right? That's the issue. The question is very simple. Do you think I am a bigger threat to American politics than the entire MAGA machine? Because now you're going to the belly of the beast. And for many liberals, I think the answer is pretty simple. They've already chosen which side they're on. They do not want to be on the side of the working class. They do not want to be on the side that centers the needs of the working class at the heart of their politics. They would much rather, what is this? Oh, thank you. What? Okay. They would much rather side with the fascists than they would with their left flank. And part of the reason why, this is part of the reason why the Democrats have been objectively unpopular, right? Like, in many respects, those to our left that routinely criticize us and tell us that we are actually rehabilitating the liberal Zionist genocidal Democratic Party's image, there is a little bit of truth in that criticism. Okay, not entirely correct, obviously, because like, what kind of Democrats are you electing is the real question here. Who are you electing? Are you using the Democratic Party as a platform to reach a broader consensus, reach a broader audience, reach the masses with your politics, or are you actually rehabilitating the Democratic Party is the real question. Now, aside from that, though, the criticism is somewhat not unfounded, partially because there is an element of breathing life back into the Democratic Party through these grassroots movements that we have been able to build. Not only are we establishing a base, not only are we establishing a machine, but we're also, associating these popular politics with the Democratic Party, even if the Democratic Party fights back tooth and nail. So from that perspective, this is unbelievably stupid. You're attacking the grassroots mobilization that's taking place, that's like unironically rehabilitating the image of the Democratic Party a little bit, right? The association with democratic socialism for Democrats is not a negative one. It's actually a positive one for the broader national party. Okay? Anyway, I got to pee.
I'm attacking the Democratic Party. And I think that's, the kind of speech that isn't helpful to the Democrats, but it is helpful to get an even larger number of people disaffected. But I think that the desire to go out and reach out to the people who are listening to him right now is a good one. And the college Dems, if they continue that approach of talking to people who are very skeptical of the Democratic Party, are on a good path to regain more supporters.
Well, Jack, first of all, we are grateful to you for coming on and talking about this, and we appreciate your willingness to engage. It's a very important part of our country. And I get what you're saying about how there are a lot of people in the world who feel disaffected. But this guy talks about very specific things. What is it that from you know a lot of young people, obviously. What is it that draws people to the specific things that Hasan Piker talks about that we all find so repellent?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people have lost faith in the ability of the American political system to affect change that his calls for a revolution become appealing because people feel that that's the only way. And I think that this goes to the need for Democrats to really show that they're delivering. But I think, Hasan in particular, part of the reason why he's just such an awful speaker and a messenger for this voice, particularly for college Democrats, one of the things I heard a lot about there was his objection to, this is someone who thinks date rape on college campuses is hilarious and something to be joked about. And it was a message that, particularly to young people, it was really helpful to so many of the people who didn't know who he was before.
Oh, he's this makes sense as to why he's a fucking sex pest in the orbiter. That's not true, obviously. No, he is using my criticisms of Liberty University, which Fox News has defended over and over again, saying, yeah, this is a sex pestiny mutant talking point. One of those talking points that mutates into something totally ridiculous. Liberty University did a anti-Title 10, created an anti-Title 10 college campus. And my criticism of that turned into Hasan Piker wants white, rich college girls to be date raped. Bullshit. It's completely fucking made up. It is completely made up. Or Title 9. Sorry, not Title 10. I apologize. Title 9. That's what it is. It was my criticism of a college campus that was expressly designed around not allowing Title 9, not allowing any sort of like date rape or rape investigations to take place on college campus, to basically cordon off all the rapists that are self-selecting and self-identifying to go there. I wonder if that space even stops and thinks about why they can only get their slander on Fox News. No, I don't think they care. I don't think they care about it. I think they are actively collaborating with the fascists to clean up their left flank. Like, this person's entire purpose here, stop sending me videos about Israeli tourists being evil. Okay, I'm not going to watch that right now. Steve's for real. Please, just take a day off, okay? I just got back. There's a million things that I'm going to cover. I'm not going to look at that right now. Yeah, no, this is cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds in real life, okay? This is what's going on. This is precisely what's taking place. For these guys, they only care about destroying their left flank, and they will go to any lengths they can. They will collaborate with the fascist administration, as they are doing here, okay, with the hopes that the Trump movement only focuses their animosity, their enmity, and their ridiculous legal pursuits that are objectively illegal when they prosecute political dissidents to communists, socialists, anarchists, to these guys' left flank. They don't realize that this actually will inevitably turn on them as well. This machine historically has turned on the liberals that have collaborated and cooperated with the fascists, and it will once again, but they're too stupid and they're too short-sighted, or perhaps they're just straightforwardly fascist and will become loud and proud advocates of the fascist movement, and they won't remain Democrats once that turn takes place. Okay?
Seeing him come out dressed as Mao was really helpful to a lot of people to know that this was not someone serious that was there to talk. And it was, people streamed out of the room. You can't see it in that shot there, but the people streamed out of the room so much so they had to close the doors to the auditorium.
Yeah, he's just making shit up, which is so crazy. Like, none of this happened. None of the things that he's saying that I have said are real. None of the things that happened in that room, like I got a fucking standing ovation you can see in the shot. But this is make believe. Okay? Yeah, everyone that was off camera was actually in agreement with me. They were really frustrated about the way Hasan was talking about the Democratic Party. But yeah, they did show the crowd. It's on the stream. Not that it matters. Why? Because again, I am criticizing the form here. Okay, I'm criticizing the function and I'm criticizing the form. I'm criticizing the medium that this person is choosing to lean into. Okay? Because it's fucking unbelievable. It's unbelievable and utterly unacceptable that someone who chooses to associate themselves with the youth wing of the Democratic Party would actively go on Fox News to criticize another youth wing of the Democratic Party and to criticize a person to their left flank. Okay? It's completely unacceptable.
Stop the mass departure. Four whole state delegations walked out in their entirety. And it was funny that, congressional candidates in R plus 30 districts got 10 times the applause that he did because people kind of know that he's a hackster, not to be taken seriously.
But does that matter? The fact that he is a fraud, does that matter if you've got millions of people who are listening to him and following him?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You have to go out and talk to the people who think that, right now there is no hope in the Democratic Party. So they're looking for figures like Piker.
Yeah. What's really interesting about this is like, are you going to present that hope? Is the hope for New Democrats charting a new path forward going to be doing the exact same thing that, Hillary Rodham Clinton did, doing the exact same thing that the establishment has done over and over again to varying degrees of failure? Do you see what I mean? Like, you don't have a vision in the affirmative. So much so that you are choosing to collaborate with fascists. Okay? You're choosing to go on the fascist platform to rail against your left flank. What is your vision? What is your vision for a better future? How are you going to chart a vision in the affirmative for a better path forward that will get people excited, that will get people off their asses and go out and vote, go out and actually push the Democratic Party? What's the vision? Better things are not possible? Would you ever critique moderate Dems? Of course, I critique moderate Dems all the time. But my criticisms of moderate Dems and the right wing of the party is the same exact criticisms that I have for the Republican Party. It's not about the aesthetics. It's not about the fact that I said on Fox News, if I ever went on Fox News, I would have a lot more to say about Fox News, even if I were to actually critique the moderate wing of the party. I would not agree with the Fox News criticisms of the Democratic Party broadly because it's inappropriate, because it's not true. As much as I have, and I would love to go on fucking Fox News. They just won't have me on. They would much rather have people like this on. You will not find me agreeing with Fox News on Fox News. Okay? That's the problem. Like what he could have said here, if he was an actual, if he was actually invested in like a big tent or something like that, what he could have said here is this. Hasan says a lot of things that I don't agree with, but he says a lot of things that are, truthful. For example, he says that the Republican Party is a firm and committed defender of the Epstein class. And this is exactly the kind of odious politics that Fox News actually defends vociferously. Okay, so let's not talk about a Twitch streamer that has a grassroots momentum backing him, or a movement that is actually breathing life back into the Democratic Party, even if I don't agree with everything that they're saying and doing. Ultimately, the real problem is those who control all of the levers of power in this country, which happens to be the Republican Party, right? The Republican Party controls every branch of the government. They've actually filled the courts all the way up to the Supreme Court with some of the worst, most reactionary judges. They are dominating American politics, and Americans are sick and tired of it. And they're now finally recognizing that voting for the Republicans, voting for the anti-establishment, the fake right-wing sloppulous, is not actually going to change the system. Is not actually changing the system for the better at all. And Fox News has been defending this system, defending the establishment. Republicans, for the longest time, have been able to present themselves as anti-establishment. Democrats, I think, need to learn from that. They need to figure out how the Republicans have been able to do this. Like, there is a way to critique me, even if you went on Fox News. Okay? But he's not doing that. He's just there to rip apart, slander, smear the left flank movement. Okay? That's it. He wants to be, his lifelong dream, I suspect, is to be a corporate stooge, a Haley Stevens type, propped up by the establishment and moneyed interest, and never understanding why the Democrats keep losing. You are being played a fool. You're a useful idiot for the right.
Who are talking about the ability to affect broad change. I think the reality is, though, that there could not be anyone less politically influenceable right now. And it's funny, even in, I've talked to a lot of people. I called his comments reprehensible. A friend of mine reminded me that Zoran Mondami said the same thing about his comments, and I really think that he's, been a very successful person in uniting the Democratic Party against his.
Yeah, they're like, no, Zoran is good, Hasan is bad. True. Fine, I'll take it. AOC's good, Hasan is too radical. Keep pointing to all the. Next up, they'll be like, Abdul El Sayed is good, Hasan is too radical. It's fine, I'll take it. No, I'll take it. Yeah, all of these guys, all of these people that I work with actively, that I've propped up, they all, that means that they are becoming undeniable within the system, within the ranks of the party. They've become so unfathomably popular amongst the base that he can't actively shit on them. I'm sure before Zoran ran, I'm sure before Zoran became the winner of the Democratic Party, or even after Zoran became the winner of the Democratic Party, he still probably had his opinions on him, his negative associations, his negative opinions with Zoran and his politics. But now he can't say anything about it. Why? Because DSA is becoming undeniable. Okay? That's it. Yeah, John Fetterman and Jared Polis, Fox and the GOP's favorite Democrats. Every Democrat that falls out of favor will then go to Fox News to run there and to say, oh, we hate this left flank shit. We hate this stuff. We hate it so much. It's like, if you did, and if you actually had the overarching approval of the entire Democratic Party's base on your side, you wouldn't have to go to Fox News and cry. Okay? These candidates would not even win. My dad even called this out. He thought it was strange that Fox News was praising. They hated like 3 months ago. Exactly.
Anti-Semitic and hateful comments.
Well, and Jack, as you mentioned, he said in his speech to the Democrats, college Democrats, that he is coming for the establishment. And with such a following, as Charlie points out, we'll see where this goes. Jack Pernick, thank you for joining us. We want to have you come back as we continue to follow this. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all.
In reality,
his negative view of Zoran probably continued for months, even after he got elected mayor, until his record was undeniable. Yes, these guys are all fraudulent. But it's good. That means we are fucking winning. Okay? That means we're winning. It's that simple. I'm one person. I don't give a shit if I'm the tank. Yeah, I saw the News Nation DSA co-chair was asked about me as well.
So let's move.
Okay, it's so funny that they were like demanding that the Democratic Socialists of America disavow me as well, which I find very funny. What about this comment? What about that comment? Do you disavow this comment? Do you disavow that comment? DSA co-chair, why don't you disavow Hasan Piker? It's like, here's the thing, okay? We have to remain strong. We have to remain consistent. We have to be disciplined, okay? that's part of the reason why, even if I hear something on the DSA platform that I don't, fully agree with or think is like optically not the best or whatever the fuck, I will still stand by my allies. Okay? You are not disciplined. Yes, I shaved. I am not disciplined. Exactly. The reason why I stand by my comrades, my allies in the Democratic Socialists of America is because they are far closer to me, if not damn near identical with my worldview, than even the right-wing centrist Democrats are, and certainly the reactionary right. We have to have a principled stance. We can have our minor disagreements. But ultimately, if we start disavowing one another, then there is no movement. Okay? I think that kind of stuff is silly. It's one of the most toxic aspects of the left. Okay? One of the most toxic aspects of the left is constantly seeking some semblance of purity by those who never even demonstrate that purity or demonstrate the same moral standards that they're applying to you. Okay? You think I'm going to sit there and listen to a goddamn fascist demand that I disavow people who are closest to me politically? Are you out of your fucking mind? Are you insane? Are you out of your mind? That's ridiculous. That's why we should stop calling people ultra. It's exactly like the calling the left hankies. Yes, the problem is there are wreckers, okay? There are wreckers. If they just shut the fuck up about how reformist the Democratic Socialists of America are, then I would never, there is, for years and years, okay, people have called me a tanky. I don't care. I don't care about that. People have called me an ultra. People have called me a tanky. They still are doing it. They're doing it every day. They're trying to turn me into a boogeyman. The problem is the people who consider themselves to be further to my left don't recognize what's going on, and they just constantly are trying to destroy what exists of like left mobilization in this fucking country. Okay? That's the problem. So I'm consistent on this. There are those Law wrecking the DNC. Yes, dude, the DNC. That's what we're doing here. This is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about, okay? Come on, man. The DSA left is not trying to destroy the left. What? No, I'm not fucking criticizing the DSA left at all. What I'm talking about are people who, instead of, like the other guy, that wasn't the DSA left that I just banned, okay? What I just banned in that situation is someone behaving like a fucking wrecker. When DSA itself has the entire federal apparatus constantly surveilling everything that they do, when I have the State Department actively calling me out, and there are people who still come in here and they go, no, you're actually not a true revolutionary, fuck you, you're actually fake and phony. Focus your sights, train your sights on the fascists. What the fuck are you doing? Immediately choosing to attack your closest fucking friends, your closest ideological allies in this moment where the fascist government is actively trying to basically throw every single political dissident into concentration camps is unbelievably annoying. It's friendly fire. Of course I'm going to yell about that. I just gave you an example of people to my right within the DSA right that I do not oppose or criticize publicly, even if I have my disagreements with them. And the same goes for people on my left as well, people to my left flank, the Maoist third worldists and whatnot. The only time I ever apply criticism is when they, whether they be to my right or to my left, are coming after a broad anti-fascist coalition. That is what they are wrecking. Do you understand? It is those who are deeply unserious and do not recognize the necessity for as broad of a movement as possible that will oppose fascism in this country that is growing, that I criticize no matter who they are. I mean, look, I just criticized a liberal Democrat who's actively coming after the entirety of the left flank. They don't make any distinction between you or I. Neither does the Republican Party. And the Republican Party doesn't even make a distinction between liberals and people on our side. Okay? It's that simple.
Democratic socialism and radicalism is simply a vessel to overthrow the U.S. of our country from within. The plan, as stated in the DSA's chapter, win elections, throw out the Constitution, abolish the Senate, abolish the Electoral College. Of course, you want to stack the courts, strip away all powers from the White House and Supreme Court, and then, boom, democratic socialism / communism, just, regular old, that'll be the end of America as we know it.
Where is this? There was someone talking about the point of wrecker. You're wrecking the DNC. You're wrecking the organization within the DNC. If you don't understand what we're trying to do here, and if you can't even comprehend why the Republicans are losing their goddamn minds over this, and why the center of power in the right wing of the Democratic Party is losing their goddamn minds, and they're cooperating with the fucking fascist right in this country, that's not our fault, okay? If this movement was unimpactful, if this movement was simply posturing from the outside, okay, and offering constant critique instead of trying to do something to make this change, then yes, this wouldn't be happening right now, okay? I've been saying the same things for a decade now. Why am I getting constant round-the-clock coverage from Fox News? Okay, there have been moments that I've been featured on Fox News, but never to this degree. Why? Why is it that only now are many of the organs of propaganda on the mainstream right and the mainstream center right, from CNN, CBS, and Fox News, why are they coming after me as aggressively as they can? Because they're not coming after me, they're coming after all of us. Okay? I'm just a figurehead. Even if I don't choose that moniker myself, even if I disavow that, it doesn't matter. That's the way they're presenting it. They're not talking about me when they say this stuff. They're talking about anyone that wants to progress in this country, anyone that wants to pull back the Overton window closer to the left, anyone that wants to fight for healthcare, anyone that is even capable or invested in criticizing Donald Trump. Okay? That is what they choose, what they want to destroy. That's their goal. And if you can't comprehend it, I don't know what to tell you. That is their goal, though. Their goal isn't to just section off different aspects of the left and offer a critical lens. Their goal is not to make the Democratic Party more competitive. You can't be stupid enough to believe that, right? Do you genuinely believe that? Do you think that these guys are actually invested in making the Democratic Party a strong Democratic Party by cutting off their left movement, their left flank? The Republicans, you think the same Republicans that have been calling Nancy Pelosi a communist for the last 2 decades, all of a sudden now are making that distinction between Nancy Pelosi and people like myself? Where is that coming from, you think? You think Fox News cares about having a strong Democratic Party? Or do you think they're actively trying to foment discontent within the left by targeting the base, by picking, DSA, its platform, it's too radical. Someone like myself saying that I'm too radical, I'm too crazy.
Now, you can vote your way into socialism, but you can't vote your way out of it. Sounds extreme? Yeah, because it is. And don't forget, Democratic Socialists, they don't love this country. One of their core leaders, Hasan Piker, said America deserved 9/11, this in the 25th anniversary year of 9/11/01. And now, in his podcast, he proudly displays a framed newspaper. Take a look at this from 9/12/01, showing the Twin Towers on fire. Take a look.
Also, you might have noticed some changes behind me. I finally framed the Cutie Cinderella newspaper from 9/11, the morning of 9/12, the newspaper right there. The newspaper that covered 9/11. It's now officially sitting behind me, and I moved the North Korean poster.
Recently, the college Democrats invited Piker to speak at their annual convention. He showed up dressed like a Chinese dictator and delivered a hate-filled rant against all of his political enemies, including Israel, Donald Trump, and other Democrats. The speech was kind of insane, so insane that the University of Kansas Democrats, they actually got up and walked out, later condemning.
This didn't happen. But I like that they're making shit up. They are merging different groups that are not a part of this organization. They're saying like, oh, Kansas Democrats actually got mad. Oh, young Democrats got mad. These are not the same. These are not the same organizations. But of course, Fox News lies about everything. They lie when ICE guns down another American citizen or someone with a legal permanent residency in the country. Why would you think that they're being honest in this moment, right? They lie about everything. So the question I have for like the dummies that still refuse to comprehend what's going on, they lie about everything. Why would they be truthful about this? They hate you, even if you are a liberal. Even if you're a liberal Democrat and you're like, oh, I just want like moderate changes to take place at a reasonable pace. They make no distinction between you. Okay? They make no distinction between you and I. There will come a moment where you will have to pick a side. Okay? That incrementalism is not going to save you. It's not. It's not going to save you at all.
Piker's extremism in a statement. Of course, Piker, well, wasn't just dressed like Chairman Mao for fun. He actually reveres one of, well, history's most evil and murderous dictators ever to exist on this planet. Take a look.
They clipped me talking about Mao Zedong up by a cop who thought I was like making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world, okay? A man who changed the entire universe, the entire planet. He did. He changed the trajectory of history. He is the founding father of the People's Republic of China. Mao Zedong gets the same level of credit that the founding fathers do for America.
Now, tens of millions of Chinese citizens.
It's true. Facts. Here, post this clip too, Sean. Why won't Sean Hannity have me on to discuss this stuff? He said he was supposed to, and instead he chose not to have me on and talk about me instead. It's very interesting. What are you afraid of, Sean? We can discourse back and forth on this issue, whatever issue you want to talk about. Dude, this is actually concerning. It's not fucking normal that Fox News is reporting on everything you say or do and portraying you as some scary villain. I swear to God, they want someone to harm you. They know what they're doing. Yes, they do. Chinese citizens don't have a problem with Mao. Why are they portraying it like he's feared and hated by the Chinese people? Yeah, well, for them, it's 1.4 billion Chinese people actually are brainwashed or too terrified to say anything about Mao Zedong. That's what it is. Like, you can't have You can't have a sober assessment of his contributions and also his excesses at the same time, which is the Chinese government's position as well, ironically enough. And it's, they're less critical than I am, as far as the Cultural Revolution goes. But even they recognize the harms that took place, and so do I. But again, for these people, they don't want to have like a real assessment. They don't want to have a real tabulation. They don't want to look at the complex historical figure that was Mao Zedong. They simply want to say he is Chinese Hitler. And what's really interesting about that is whether you hate China, whether you actively want to foment hatred towards China or not, it doesn't matter. If you see China as a foreign adversary, you must still understand China. If you see China as another great power in the world that you want to cooperate with rather than constantly saber rattle against, you must still understand China. And that's what's really interesting about this. So I listened to the Ezra Klein conversation that took place on my flight back, okay, where Ezra Klein had the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, on. Kevin Rudd is probably one of the best China understanders in the Western world. This man has obsessively studied contemporary Chinese history all the way from college, and then he has had a direct relationship with Xi Jinping as well at his time in the Australian Foreign Service, and then later on as an Australian diplomat, and also the 26th Prime Minister of Australia from 2007 to 2010. He has personally experienced Xi Jinping's rise to power. He has personally a decent understanding of China. He was China maxing before anyone else was. Now, he's not the biggest fan of China by any means. However, unlike many of his counterparts, he recognizes that in order to develop even a critical understanding of China, in order to develop the best defenses against China, if that's your goal, you still have to understand China. You still have to understand Marxist-Leninism. You have to understand Xi Jinping's rise to power. No one in the Western world, many of the Western analysts actually fail to do this adequately, which is why they constantly they constantly find themselves lost. Okay? That's it. It's unbelievably stupid. It's in a way, it's no different than what the right wing was saying about Mark Milley. When Mark Milley came out and was like, of course I've read Mao Zedong. Of course I've read, formative Marxist literature. And we continue to teach that to our officers. We continue to teach that to people who end up becoming generals. The reason for why we do that is because we must understand the enemy. We must study the enemy if we choose to understand it, if we choose to fight back effectively. Okay? So my argument here in this circumstance, regardless of my difference in opinion with the likes of Kevin Rudd, right, who is arguably no fan of China, my argument for those who just simply go, oh, dude, you're a fucking silly radical, shut the fuck up. My argument always is, no, you have to read. You have to understand. Even if you hate China, you still have to understand China. Otherwise, you're going to be like, how did they become this behemoth? How did they become this superpower over the course of 3 decades? How did that happen? You'll get lost. And I don't understand why. I have studied fascists as well. Doesn't mean I like fascism, but I have to understand it. I have to understand where these guys are coming from. That's the reason why I watch Fox News as well. I'm a student of the right as well. And the reason for why I do this is because I need to understand how they galvanize the base, how they organize, what issues they organize around. Okay? This kind of thought-terminating fake patriotism is simply to delude your base, to make sure that your side never even develops any understanding of how China became this modern behemoth, this titan, okay? It's very stupid. It's so stupid that I'm not even saying you need to be a Marxist Leninist. I'm simply saying just read, please. and develop a better understanding. Okay. And ironically enough, this interview was pretty solid. I mean, all the way up until the end. Like, there's a lot of there's fear mongering at the end of the conversation, of course, but I will stand by this. Kevin Rudd, unlike any other Western analyst, which is again low bar to clear, Kevin Rudd understands China. Okay, he disagrees, and he has plenty of critique, some valid, some I think exaggerated, but he absolutely understands and takes seriously the way that the People's Republic of China formed. He talked extensively about dialectics, dialectical materialism, historical materialism. He talked about Xi's rise to power. He talks about Marxist-Leninism. He talks about Leninism in general. He talks about the direction that Xi Jinping took the PRC, took the Communist Party of China, which is, again, there have been transformations with each formation. And Xi Jinping has done a lot in the direction of he completely misrepresented Marxist-Leninism in that podcast. I think in comparison to the average person's understanding, it was crude, it was reductive, but it was absolutely far better than the average Westerner. I am, again, grading Kevin Rudd on a fucking curve, okay? In comparison to the way that most Western analysts frame China, the very notion that he recognizes that these guys are committed Leninists, committed Marxist-Leninists, is automatically going to place you far above the rest. Okay? I think ultimately his critique of China stems from his liberal worldview. He was much better on China when he was in government. I think he's pandering for clout nowadays. I mean, ultimately, my point wasn't about, he's great on China or I agree with him. My point was that he, at the very least, is a person whom I disagree with, who still has done the fucking reading. If you are a Western analyst, if you are a Western politician, and you openly say, look, we must not underestimate China, and that they are committed to their understanding, their own interpretation of where China is on their socialist development, but they are still nevertheless committed to developing socialism, okay? You are far above almost every other Western analyst, because Western analysts look at this and they go, China is capitalist. China doesn't care about anything other than just like, being... other than the CCP controlling the government, and, they harass everyone endlessly. They fucking destroy and kill political dissidents. There's mass surveillance, all this stuff, which Kevin Rudd also points to, right? Ultimately, he still understands China far better than the average Westerner does. I'll give you a more contemporary example of this, even though the Chinese one is obviously still very relevant because it's our major adversary, right? Our major adversary as the great power, this behemoth that's like destroying the world from the assessment of Western analysts. It's Iran. The reason why so many of my counterparts got the Iran situation wrong is because they were blinded by ideology and they were blinded by Western primacy. Okay? They had a bias. They could not fathom that a middle power could potentially effectively control the Strait of Hormuz, use the geographical limitations of the Strait of Hormuz, which is only 21 miles wide, to their advantage with a relatively low-cost strategy of just drone striking commercial vessels. The reason why we got that wrong, or the reason why we got that right here, is because I understand and take seriously the things that foreign adversaries say. Okay? A year ago, Iran would not have been considered a possible global superpower. It's not a global superpower still, okay? But it's very clear that it can project power beyond its immediate borders, or rather, they are capable of projecting power right next to their borders, which happens to be one of the most important geographical locations for the global energy trade. My point is, if you underestimate Iran, you find yourself confused 200 days in, where you think to yourself, how the fuck did this happen? Why can America not militarily destroy Iran? Why can't the United States of America force Iran to heal? It's because we underestimated the Iranian capabilities. Okay? You could fill a book with pro-war pundits who were embarrassingly wrong about almost every aspect of the Iran war and led Trump and the U.S. into disaster. Here's a thread of just some of the worst offenders and the utter tripe they want you to forget that they were peddling. Max Abrams. Abrams was really feeling himself after Trump's attacks on Iran last year, which largely avoided spiraling into disaster only because of how limited U.S. involvement was and because of Iran's restraint at the time. He decided to take this as confirmation that the risks were non-existent and that anybody who had ever warned about them was wrong, kicking off a months-long victory lap aimed at war skeptics. In a debate over the war at last year's National Conservatism Conference, Abrams assailed mostly conservative critics of the war as empirical embarrassments and mocked their delusions, which included the idea that a war with Iran would become a regime change war, that it would necessitate U.S. ground troops, that it would be a protracted conflict, that it would kill Americans, that hurt the U.S. economy, and that it would deal a mortal blow to Trump's presidency. That was wrong. That was laughably wrong. By April, Abrams was arguing that the United States has enhanced its military capability through this war, continuing the nonsense that there was some benefit to the United States of America here, when everyone that was reasonable, everyone that was conducting sober analysis, including people who were previously American exceptionalists that may have demanded this kind of dangerous military escalation, had recognized, like the Atlantic Council, Danny Citrinowicz at the Atlantic Council, a NATO Atlanticist in every way, shape, and form. Someone who is not aligned with me at all in the way that they see the world. Okay? They were early in recognizing how big of a disaster this was becoming for American dominance around the world, for American force projection capabilities. Okay? Some recognized it early on. There are those who did not. Part of that was because they were ideologically invested in advancing the Greater Israel Project. Some of them were too ideologically invested in the idea that American military dominance is absolute, okay? And that a country like Iran would never be able to push back. A country like Iran would never be able to fight back. This is what happens when you underestimate your enemy. This is what happens when you underestimate your foreign adversaries. Many of these guys on the Republican side, and maybe even some on the liberal side who are collaborating with them, will turn around and say, Hasan, you're pro-Iran, you're pro-China, you love China more than you love America, you love Iran more than America. I live in the United States of America. I am an American, okay? My point always has been there are things that we can learn from these supposed foreign adversaries, and that we should always give peace a chance. That's my attitude on this, okay? So you could turn around and say, oh, you're posturing, you're actually fake, you're phony, you're IRGC defender all day, every day. None of that matters, okay? What matters is we were right and these guys were wrong. So one must understand why we were right and they were wrong. That's it. Do you want to keep being wrong over and over again until your force projection capabilities diminish even further? Or do you want to get back to the drawing board and maybe restrain yourselves? Former 60 Minutes correspondent Cecilia Vega said CBS News executives pressured her to make several stories appear more politically slanted, calling some requested edits driven by misinformation and politics. Vega was asked to describe Iran as being outgunned by the United States and Israel, which she called an administration talking point. This doesn't actually serve anybody. When you delude the base, when you lie to the base, you only basically win some time for yourself, for your movement. It's unbelievably selfish, okay? But at the end of the day, the truth prevails, right? That's how we arrived. That's how we arrived at the situation this past weekend, where Donald Trump was signaling further military action in the Strait of Hormuz, only to then restrain himself by force. And when asked why Donald Trump did not do the big military conquest over Pickaxe Mountain, that's even deeper than the previous facilities that we had bombed into oblivion, he turned around and said, "We're running out of interceptor missiles." The U.S. government is now allowing some of the Iranian missiles to go through, especially if they calculate that the Iranian ballistic munitions are not supposed to hit direct targets. They're allowing those missiles to go through and strike. Some of those missiles have killed American active duty service members at this point, 17 of them to be exact. I believe it's 17. The real number is probably far higher. But the number that we know right now is, I think, either 16 or 17 or 18. The calculations are changing. Why is the American government now deciding to chart a different path forward? Well, it's because the truth always prevails. There's nothing you can do if at the end of the day, Iranian missiles are striking U.S. military bases and killing American active duty service members. There's not too much you can do about, changing the dynamic of that by yapping. You can't out-propagandize U.S. soldiers dying, okay? And why did I talk about all this? Because what's important is always to understand. What's always important, even if you want to have a tactical advantage over your foreign adversaries, even if you disagree with me vehemently on this issue, okay? You still need to read. You still need to study. You still need to internalize and identify how other people think. That's why I said the Kevin Rudd conversation was very good, in my opinion, because he does. Kevin Rudd and I disagree on China or China's place around the world. I don't think it's as scary as Rudd presents it. Obviously, he's a former prime minister of Australia. Of course, he has this kind of attitude. But at the end of the day, he has, at the very least, studied contemporary and ancient Chinese history, and has a direct and personal involvement with the development of the People's Republic of China, and he understands why China became this behemoth that it is.
The first is, I've read enough of Xi Jinping to conclude that he is a convinced Marxist dialectician. What do I mean by that? Because it's not a term that we bandy around at Starbucks much here in New York. But it's important we understand how the other person thinks. But more importantly, their methodology, their epistemology, the way in which they reach conclusions about that which is
very important. I agree.
Real and that which is not, that which is true and that which is false. But when a dialectician, which sounds like a horrible word, comes from Hegel, the German philosopher, adopted by Marx and Engels. And it is essentially a view of history that there are two fundamental sets of forces changing historical developments over time. One's called dialectical materialism, and the second is called historical materialism. So what the hell is that? Dialectical materialism is a worldview by Marxists, which says that change in society, the economy, and politics occurs between this constant push between progressive forces and reactionary forces, which they ultimately describe as the forces of the working class versus the capitalist class. And ultimately, one pushes hard against the other, overturns the other, and creates a new synthesis, which ultimately is a communist state. And so that's dialectical materialism. And the Chinese Communist Party says
basically the inevitable historical engine that pushes through the capitalist state to communism.
That's true. And through the agency of what they call class struggle or just struggle. By the way, one of the things that Xi Jinping has rehabilitated as a term in China's political discourse today is struggle, 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 a term which largely disappeared during the Deng, Zhang, and Hu period. So bear with me for a moment. This is turgid stuff, and I apologize to your listeners.
This is a safe space for turgidity.
This is seriously turgid.
They know what to expect.
This is seriously turgid, and I've had to read this stuff, and I wouldn't recommend it to any of you unless you're suffering from deep insomnia. And I can give you the relevant chapters of my book, which will send you off to sleep. But historical materialism is the parallel discipline which asks Marxist historians this question: where are we in this current historical moment, in the evolution of this inexorable struggle between progressive and reactionary forces, between working class and the capitalist class, between working class nation states and capitalist nation states, in producing this final resolution through struggle of an evolution towards a socialist and communist society. And where they say, through historical materialism, China has reached, is that they are now moving out of what they call the primitive stage or the primary stage of socialism into something higher than that, and that the role of the Chinese Communist Party under Xi's leadership is to further accelerate that.
I mean, this is, again, this is reductive. But ultimately, it is far above and beyond the average Western analyst. One must ask the question why this kind of platform is being given to this kind of thought in this very moment by even the likes of Ezra Klein. The reason why this is happening is because it's undeniable. It's undeniable that China has a greater presence on the global stage. It's undeniable that their growth has given them tremendous economic leverage over the Western world, over the entire world, certainly over the United States of America. At some point, they even bring up the fact that China defeated Donald Trump and his tariffs agenda. Out of every Western analyst you listen to, I was probably one of the very few people that told you exactly what was going to happen with Liberation Day tariffs, at least with our relationship with China. There's a reason why I, a person that they call a radical, a person that they call silly and stupid, got that right. It's not because I have unbelievable foresight. It's because I'm intellectually curious and also honest. Okay? That's it. If you were in here when Liberation Day was happening, what did I tell you? I told you that Liberation Day and all these mass tariffs that Donald Trump is trying to position as he forcibly tries to decouple the rest of the world from the grips of Chinese manufacturing, this design that we placed together, this design that we created for the international markets, which we no longer want, so we're just basically trying to wipe the board clean because of our now over-reliance on Chinese manufacturing, was not going to work. It was not going to work in the short term. It was not going to work in the long term. And the reason for that is because China has a monopoly on rare earth, and the procurement and refinement of rare earth minerals, critical minerals that are necessary for national defense and virtually everything else. If you knew that, as I did, you would recognize that that is a massive point of leverage that China had over the United States of America. Okay? So a lot of these people that still turn around and say, oh, Hasan, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Why were you wrong then? Why was I a stupid guy? Why was I right and you were wrong? How did that happen? Same thing goes for Chinese ghost cities. If you are so ideologically blinded by the notion that housing is simply a speculative asset and that no one could possibly build housing to shelter folks, no one could possibly build housing for any purpose other than economic activity to show the Western world, than to improve their GDP. If you cannot comprehend that China was simply building housing with a long-term shelter attitude in mind, then yes, you would read those articles about the ghost cities of China and you would laugh and you would think to yourself, oh, look at these silly guys. They're just trying to build housing to make it look like they have tremendous economic activity taking place in the countryside, and not realize that there was rapid urbanization that was taking place. There was rapid development taking place. This is what I mean when I say do not underestimate your opponent. If you consider China to be an opponent, you should still try to understand where they're coming from. Okay, where have you been? I've been looking for videos on if you were banned or something. I chat GPT'd, I grokked it. They said you were planning stuff in burnout. Wait, what? You chat GPT'd why I was gone? That's crazy. Anyway, let's get back to the Sean Hannity conversation now.
Actually died under Mao, many due to starvation, many more died in political prison camps or at the barrel of a gun lined up against the wall. Now, this is what democratic radical socialists want to bring to America. Now, Jon Stewart, he's all smiles, kicks and giggles, laughing it up with New York City's communist mayor. Take a look.
You know, being a Muslim democratic socialist, I thought it would be pretty straightforward.
You just saw like, well, what if I label myself something that scares people the most? I'm a Muslim democratic socialist.
If you scare them, you scare them twice.
And I'd like to run your public transportation system.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What happened to the free buses anyway? And now, according to Jon Stewart, there's no need to panic over the rise of socialism. It's just a populist economic movement. Apparently, Jon Stewart is thinking that the left doesn't actually support the radical policies stated in the DSA's own charter. Take a look.
We're in that same place now where all these new ideas, suddenly the Democrats are, these democratic socialists, they're crazy. And you're like, well, but that generally their crazy ideas aren't where the energy is. The energy isn't around like, we shouldn't have prisons or borders. The energy is around a belief that their economic populism. And when you call it socialism, I think it's a misnomer. Like in the same way that if you call Social Security socialism, that's kind of a misnomer. It's about strengthening a safety net for a country that has suffered too long overvaluing capital and money and undervaluing labor and work.
Now, the energy is about open borders, defund, dismantle, no bail laws, reimagine the police.
He's such a lib. I mean, yes, they are. Americans are self-identifying liberals, okay, for the most part. This is something that we have to understand, okay? What do I always say? In order to build a mass movement, which is what socialism is, you have to speak to the masses. You have to speak to the struggles of the masses. You have to speak the language of the masses, and you have to go to where the masses are, okay? That's it. And after almost a century of liberal monoculture, liberal capitalist dominance, of course, a lot of people are self-identifying liberals. And yes, someone like Jon Stewart is very much a social democrat, a liberal who still finds the moniker, the identifier of socialism to be far too radical or dangerous or whatever. So these are baby steps that they need to take, reformist baby steps that I think a lot of orthodox Marxists consider to be dangerous because this is from their perspective, this is like the Bernstein revisionism that initially destroyed the international left, the socialist or the communist movements all around Western Europe. Okay? What they fail to recognize is that the situation has changed. Okay, industry has advanced. The same productive forces, the productive forces in the West do not look the same any longer. Okay, so our tactics have to change as well, especially in a country like the United States of America, where we have to penetrate collective consciousness and we have to rip apart the previous setbacks born out of a century of Red Scare propaganda, born out of a necessity for capital to dominate the masses, to make the masses forget that they are a part of the working class. This is the first step. It's not the last step. If it stops here, then that's a problem. Okay? We do not want simple, modest reforms. Okay? We want to change the entire system. But you have to understand, it's not bad enough for people to come to terms with their class position. Contradictions worsen. Okay, contradictions are as bad as they have ever been in the last 50 to 60 years. It's nowhere, but it's not as bad as it was in the 20s, right? Technological advancements, the sedentary element of social media and all of the treats that we can consume that are at our disposal. These are things that make people feel as though their lives have materially improved. And in some respects, they have, right? If you were to look back at the 60s, for example, the luxury items that we have, the average worker, and the luxury items that they are capable of receiving, that they're capable of holding on to, are the exact opposite. Okay. Now we look at housing as a luxury, but at the same time, we can fly around the world, right? You can get a little bit of disposable income if you're lucky enough, if you've saved enough to go and fly anywhere around the world. You can have a massive TV. You can have a refrigerator in your house that's much nicer than the refrigerators that used to exist. If you look at the actual cost of a television in like the 70s and 80s, it was far higher than the average cost of a TV now. But at the same time, if you look at the price of housing, whether it be rent or whether it be housing that you can purchase, it was endlessly affordable in comparison to now. Take it one step further, go all the way back to, I don't know, the time when kings existed. Like the average worker is now capable of experiencing things that were only readily available to lords, kings, demigods. Okay? That is important to identify. It's all topsy-turvy. It's flipped on its head. We can no longer afford housing, but we can afford all of these treats that genuinely improve our lives for sure. The price of commodities have gone down. Specifically, things that would have been considered luxury items, luxury goods have become endlessly affordable. But things that are necessary for survival, things that are necessary for upward social mobility, healthcare, housing, and, a college education, those are the three things that have become endlessly unaffordable in the process. And depending on your perspective, those things are either inelastic goods or inelastic, like services that have inelastic demand, or are necessary for upward social mobility. But as long as the price of groceries remains relatively cheap, which, by the way, it's not, it's getting less and less affordable as time goes on. Okay, but as long as those commodities are relatively accessible, relatively affordable, the material conditions will not deteriorate to such a degree that people are living through the roaring 20s again.
Of energy on all of those topics. They do support these extreme goals. They do hate America as we know it. They do want to upend our Constitution. They do want to replace capitalism with socialism, communism. And so far, 35 DSA-backed candidates now have won primaries all across the country ahead of a very important midterm come November. And none of these candidates have made a move to the center for the primary. In fact, they're very honest about wanting to upend the American system. When someone tells you who they are and what they plan to do, my advice is you may want to believe them, or maybe you could just listen to President Trump. Take a listen.
Communism is a loser. The concept, the policy, it's a loser, and it always has been, and it always will be. And, they want to give everyone everything away. You want free rent, you want free house, what they don't say is that a year from now, There'll be absolute squalor, turmoil, and death. And that's the way it's happened all the way. It goes back thousands of years by different names. But that's the way it happens all the time. It's squalor, it's poverty, it's death, it's destruction. And that's why we declare again today that the United States of America will never be a communist country. America is back. It's stronger than ever before. And I'm telling you, it's only going one way. It's going up. As long as we keep our current thinking, our current system, it's going up. If you go the other way, nothing ever succeeds. I made the statement once, with communism, everything turns to okay? It's true.
It's true. All right, so where are all those courageous Democrats who care about the Constitution, the rule of law, the American way of life? They seem to be few and far between. All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we have seen the way that the Republicans operate. We have seen the way that the Republicans operate for the last decade, especially post-Donald Trump. Republicans have always behaved this way. Donald Trump is just a logical conclusion of reactionary propaganda, reactionary politics in general. But the idea that Democrats need to join hands with the Republicans to fight against their common enemy, communism, is insane. Okay? Any Democrat that leans into this shit has to be a cynical actor. They have to be. Because it's very clear that these people have no respect for the Constitution. They have no respect for improving people's lives. They have no interest in improving people's lives. They are genuinely using the last vestiges of this once powerful country to steal as much of the productive resources, the productive output, and your money as they possibly can to enrich themselves, the pedophilic Epstein class, and their close associates and their fail sons. Okay? It's clear. It's clear that there is a plunder taking place right now. And it's clear for most people in the working class. It's even clear for the likes of... it's even clear for some in the Republican side. They still associate themselves with Trump and Trumpism, because, you know, they've deployed too much. They've invested too much into this movement. So it's tough for them to see that this movement has failed them. But if there are liberals out there who think that this is going to be a beneficial allegiance and not one that ends up harming them in the long run, they're delusional. Okay? Stop collaborating with fascists. They do not have your best interest at heart. They were calling you a pedophilic communist vampire last week. What makes you think things have changed now? It's unbelievable to me.
To President Biden. Michael, lay it out there for us.
This guy is a classic example of this, right? Establishment Democrats that are running to cooperate with fascists in order to attack their left flank.
Is blue MAGA?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, the article said it in the New York Times said it was sort of anything for what anybody wants it to be. This is the first I've heard of it, actually, and since I read the New York Times piece.
It's catchy.
What's that?
It's catchy.
It's catchy, clever play on words. I give him credit. But look, if being blue MAGA means you want to avoid losers as candidates, like Graham Plattner or anybody who had a Nazi tattoo, or nominating Democrats with toxic positions like abolish ICE or defund the police, or banning private health care insurance, then sure, fine, call me blue MAGA, I guess. Those are not winners. Those are not winning issues or winning positions.
All right, here's what Hasan Piker told the New York Times. He said, blue MAGA is about cult-like loyalty to the Democratic Party, but unlike MAGA, it isn't centered around one person. It's centered around the image of a party that consultants and lobbyists have carefully curated. This obviously
cooked. Excellent. Excellent take from that guy. I don't know who that guy is. He has a beard. Different guy than me, but kind of agree. Kind of help. I hear that and I think to myself, wow, that guy is going places. That guy is correct.
Obviously becoming the new ding on the party establishment. Folks like Nancy Pelosi who have spent their careers raising, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars for candidates.
Why is Fox News defending Nancy Pelosi's honor? Why is Fox News defending Nancy Pelosi's honor? When have they done that? Why are they doing that?
Yeah, and look, I understand a frustration with sort of the groupthink mentality sort of at the top. And I spoke out in the last cycle when I was, kind of sending some warning signals about President Biden's challenges and his vulnerabilities, and just even acknowledging that problems existed within the polling. And I lost friends. I was blacklisted from other networks. I was called a traitor or a bedwetter. I was called a lot worse than a.
Yeah, that's why now I can only go on Fox News to complain.
Blue MAGA. But I'm also not going to take advice from somebody who has no idea what he's talking about. I mean, this guy makes a living being a provocateur, saying provocative, offensive things. I'm glad he has a political science degree from Rutgers, but he knows nothing about government, politics, public policy, or anything.
Well, we appreciate you here, having you enjoy talking to you on the program. I want to ask you about this while we have you. New York Magazine reports, like it or not, Kamala Harris.
Is he saying that you were in support of Biden? I mean, I was in support of Biden reluctantly. I in 2019, if you go back far enough, you'll see in 2019, while the primaries were just beginning, I said, if we elect Joe Biden is going to set back any kind of progressive movement in this country. He's too old, and everyone can see that he's too old, and he is going to be a one-term president. It is a major mistake. But once past the point of Super Tuesday, when it was very clear that Joe Biden was going to be the candidate, unfortunately, when the establishment Democrats consolidated their support behind him, shouts out to Barack Obama for that. It was obvious that he was going to be the winner. Unfortunately, I reluctantly lent my support to Joe Biden. I did. I told my audience to plug their nose and vote for him. Okay. Joe Biden won, and change didn't come. And people were even more frustrated. They saw negative real wage growth for a year and a half under the Biden administration. That was hugely frustrating. And the Biden administration was absolutely, utterly incapable of defending against the barrage of reactionary attacks, saying that Joe Biden was opening up the floodgates of migration from the third world, all this stuff. One of the few good things that Biden did was pull out of Afghanistan. Everyone endlessly critiqued him for it. His reputation never recovered. There was a uniparty approach, different time. And then, Biden's crowning achievement for his devastating term, was the complete advancement of Israel's genocidal project and genocidal ambitions over Gaza. And he will forever be remembered as the guy, as Genocide Joe. Yeah, this is back in 2020. I said, one truly wild thing that we haven't really talked about is Biden's stated interest in being a single-term president. Like, we're just going to throw away our incumbent advantage because Joe's going to be a vegetable by the end of his presidency. Truly incredible stuff. And at the time, the same centrist forces were yelling at me and saying, you're wrong. You're wrong. Because that was a false rumor. turns out it actually caused the Democrats to lose a tremendous amount of credibility amongst the base because they could see personally that Joe Biden's mental faculties had deteriorated. Okay. And they lost a lot of trust.
Harris is the front runner this for the next presidential election cycle. Quote, she's been listening to the American people and really trying to figure out what's impacting them and how she can be of service to them. Right now, we need leaders that can take us in a different direction and bring us back together as a party. This from a longtime Democratic strategist who ran the DNC that nominated Harris in 2024.
Well, she's been a public servant for 37 years. I don't know why she's still listening. She needs to stop listening and start leading. People want to hear what she has to say. And the problem is that people want that new car smell, as Barack Obama once said. They're not going to give Kamala Harris a third at bat. There is no appetite for another Kamala Harris candidacy. And I hope that her consultants are only as good and they're only as useful to you if they tell you the truth.
Oh my God, I can't. I don't want to even hear this. Where there's
Welcome
more.
back.
Will Kane, former DSA member, reveals what the organization is really like. Oh my God, they got infiltrators. It's awesome. So most of the commentary is just like DSA is ruining the party. DSA is ruining the party. Hasan is ruining the party. Real ever-present danger to. I mean, now that we got infiltrators, former DSA members coming out and being like, this is why I left the party. They got too radical after October 7, all this shit. Just know that there is a lot of motion in this movement. There's that one, like, the thumbnail is just you next to Mao. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, why I left the left, why I left the DSA. DSA is bad. Growing pains, everybody. It was inevitable that we would get our moment in the spotlight. And of course, the lights are going to get too hot. And I hope people can learn from my valuable experience in this field. I've had the spotlight trained on me as a tank for a decade almost, as someone who has been propped up as the singular vestige, singular arbiter of all things left on the internet. Now mainstream outlets are doing the same to DSA and myself as well. Okay? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. This is a good thing. We just have to be more disciplined than ever before. We have to do away with sectarian infighting. Or even if we have constructive critique for one another and self-critique as well, we have to still remember what this movement represents. Yeah. Deets on DNC's latest challenges. DNC used to own building. DNC uses its own building as collateral for its biggest ever off-year loan in 2025. Per previously unreported docs, Ken Martin was the subject of an HR inquiry after throwing a phone near an aide. Yeah, no wonder the DSA is making such inroads right now. There isn't a Democratic Party to speak of. There isn't. The DNC has fallen asleep at the wheel, but this presents an opportunity for us.
It's a question we've been asking all week. What does a future under democratic socialism look like? Well, my next guest spent years as a member of the DSA until 2022. And he says the direction they're going in is, quote, utopian. Joining me now is a former DSA member, Jake Altman. Jake, that's an interesting.
So Jake Altman been dropping your name 3 months ago? Yeah, no, his whole, what the fuck? El Sayed ally supports Hezbollah, defends pedophiles? What the fuck? Amir Makled lost a key union endorsement? I don't think he's talking about me. I think he's talking about Amir Makled. But even that is bullshit as well. But regardless, Jake Altman's entire point is I'm a former DSA guy and I hate the DSA. They're too radical, okay?
word because I would imagine that's considered a compliment in DSA circles, a utopian vision of the future.
Yeah, I think they probably think that, but the reality is very, very scary. At this point, a majority of the governing board is controlled by people who are explicitly communist.
So, yeah,
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Are you telling me that a socialist organization that has the word socialist in its name has socialist in its leadership structure? Hold on. Guys, what the fuck is going on? I'm confused. I'm scared. I've been a lifelong Democratic Socialist of America member, and this is causing me great panic and great distress. A socialist organization with socialists? What the hell is going on? I think this isn't a bad thing. I think this is a good thing. This is an important way for, even more radical elements of the Democratic Socialists of America to get more mainstream recognition. They will try to do everything in their power to say, this is radical, these guys are radical. This is an important moment for the DSA left and the DSA right to unite, okay? It's very important. If DSA right turns around and uses this as an opportunity, uses this kind of like sectarian infighting as an opportunity to gain even more power within the organization, they're silly and they're dumb and they should not do this. Okay, this is how you destroy a larger big tent socialist movement. I don't think it'll happen regardless, because even the furthest right elements within the Democratic Socialists of America obviously were very critical of that one person who just came out of nowhere and was like, that one person on Twitter who was like, I joined DSA finally. And then a week later was like, I'm leaving DSA because the DSA needs to purge all of its tankies. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? The fuck? The fuck do you mean? The fuck are you talking about? You can't just join an organization and immediately be like, we have to clean house. What? The hell are you talking about? I guess the trash cleaned itself out. The fuck?
Our vision, that would be pretty dystopian. Why does that come as a surprise to you, Jake? I mean, if you remember the DSA, did you see some midway point between democratic socialism and...
Yeah, and the New York Times immediately put the beat on DSA as well. They found the person and interviewed them. Yeah, I saw this. The fact that Lefty Winter joined DSA 2 seconds ago and is already getting interviewed by the New York Times for an anti-DSA hit piece says everything we needed to know. That's a plant. Yeah. Can't believe I'm doing an interview with a former AOC legislative aide with the New York Times who left DSA because of how they treated her. My New York Times call just ended, and it went very well. The three of us talked for over an hour, talked about what DSA could be doing instead, why we think DSA should split, AOC for president, electoral politics, our stories in the 2024 DNC speech about AOC and the online response. We talked about the ultra left. Really happy how it went well. I don't know when the article will be out since he's trying to contact the DSA's folks and also other DSA folks who are on our side. We'll see. Plus, there's a DSA convention coming up that this reporter will be attending. It'll be interesting. Let me tell you something, okay? She's not a plant. She's just goofy. I mean, plant or not, this is wrecker behavior, okay? This is what it is. The moment that you collaborate with a mainstream organ of propaganda in their hit piece against the Democratic Socialists of America is a moment where you become an op. You move on from useful idiot to opposition. That's just how it works. I've given plenty of interviews to the New York Times. I have interviews coming out with the Wall Street Journal, numerous other organizations, numerous other mainstream platforms, and you will never see me fucking shit on the Democratic Socialists of America. It's totally ridiculous. This is opposition. People using what kind of, like, people using the fractional experiences that they have within the Democratic Socialists of America, or the longstanding experiences they've had. Like, is this guy Altman? He was a part of DSA for a much longer time than this other person, right? Like, he just didn't like the direction that the DSA was going, which is become successful. Okay, become a real powerhouse within American politics. He didn't like that. He didn't like the organization was growing and becoming actually a successful organization. So he left, and now he tries to make a living off of shitting on left mobilization in this country.
Communism that you hope that they would land on?
When I joined 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago at this point, when I joined, it was a cozy, they were advocating for Scandinavian social democracy, right? And then over a 10-year period, we saw the organization just...
Oh, yeah, I was a social democrat, and I didn't like that democratic socialists were actually democratic socialists. Okay, got it. So much of the disagreements amongst the American left also revolve around American foreign policy. Anti-imperialism is, unfortunately, one of the biggest dividing lines within left movements. That's one of the biggest issues. And that extends to all manner of American exceptionalist thought, whether it be, what do we do about immigration? You know, these dirty third world masses are coming in to ruin the country. Like, that is an attitude that the right has, and that is a reactionary sentiment born out of white supremacist thought that maybe even some people within the ranks of socialists in the country also share some kind of like mutual resentment towards the masses that are coming from undeveloped countries, right? And the same goes for obviously principled anti-imperialist thought. Many people do not want to see a world where America is not the hegemonic superpower. Many people do not want to understand what that requires. Okay? Obviously, while I, on the one hand, talk about building a big tent movement or a mass movement, on the other hand, I also understand that you have to have some fucking principles. Okay? You have to have some goddamn principles. We must always say the truth. We must always seek truth from facts, and we must always say the truth. Okay? You do not have to compromise on your values. You can obviously entertain a more appropriate message, especially given the medium that you're occupying. But ultimately, you don't cast aside your values. You don't cast aside your moral compass.
Become more and more extreme and move from that cozy Scandinavian social democracy to really something quite frightening. To, you know, they're advocating for communism in their latest platform they've released.
Yeah. You know, I'm old enough to remember that as well, Jake. I remember when people openly talked about Scandinavian countries as the model. You don't hear that anymore. You hear, about open embrace of communism and honestly, this weird as well embrace of Islamism.
What? Communo-Islamism, the open embrace of communism and Islamism is fucking awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people in DSA are out with the whitewash brush right now, trying to tell people, trying to sell this line that it's just cozy Scandinavian social democracy. But the reality is very, very different. And yes, it's true. They have this alliance with extremism, right? They are extreme, and they have an alliance with very, very extreme pro-terror voices. And frankly, it's quite frightening.
So we've reported on that, what's been called the Red-Green Alliance, which is definitely a short-term arrangement between Islamic fascism and socialism. So you wrote, by the way, in the Free Press, I witnessed a rise in extremism ranging from the...
Islamic fascism and socialism? Dog, you are literally a Christo-fascist. You are a Christian fascist network. The movement is Christian fascism. That is the real movement. There is no Islamic fascism growing in this country. I don't even know what they mean when they say Islamofascism. They just assume that like Zoran Mamdani or even someone like myself are actually trying to implement some sort of like Salafist regime in this country with Sharia as the law of the land. You know, it's fucking racist ass Islamophobic tropes.
Eagerness
Bullshit.
to collaborate with Leninist groups to a growing animosity towards the United States and the West. My final departure was prompted by the DSA statement that attributed Russia's aggression against Ukraine to American imperialist expansionism. Jake, would you say that this change in the DSA, and we've had other people report on this, and it's moved towards both communism and the embrace of perhaps some radical Islam as well, belies just an underlying hatred of the West and America?
It absolutely does. I think these people have never met an enemy of America they weren't willing to fall down apologizing for. And we've just seen that again and again. We've seen that with Hamas. We've seen that with Russia. We see it with Maduro. We see it in Cuba. All of these authoritarian regimes, they are ready to apologize for them again and again and again. But it's America that they view as fundamentally evil, and it's just wrong.
Jake, do you look back on your time with the DSA now and think it got hijacked, or do you now look at it and say, really, there was no ideological break once you started moving towards socialism, and it was inevitably going to run into the hands of extremists? By the way, Jake, just like it has in most countries around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do see that either in situations like this, you either move in pragmatic direction towards pro-capitalist, social safety net, Scandinavian social democracy, which has a high degree of economic freedom, or you move in this incredibly authoritarian way, right, where you get secret police, people being rounded up and brutalized. And I'm afraid that that's what we're seeing in DSA right now.
In America. Yeah. Well, Jake Altman, thank you for talking about it, and
yes.
thank you about sharing with us that with us here today.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Do you understand why that?
More than a decade.
Do you understand why that allegiance is ridiculous? By the way, why that commentary is ridiculous? They're talking about how the DSA wants to build like secret police, right? And they're gonna be Leninists. They're gonna do secret police. We already have secret police right now, and Fox News covers it on a daily basis and talks about how wonderful that secret police actually is. That's the issue. We already have it. We just have a fascist secret police. It's called ICE. Okay? That's what they're doing. We already have mass surveillance. You talk about China. You talk about Chinese mass surveillance. We already have it. Flock cameras. Okay? The problem is the West is taking some of the worst elements of Chinese governance and none of the good stuff. Okay? That's the issue. That's the problem. They choose to define China by some of the more repressive elements of Chinese governance, and they say that they oppose that, while simultaneously they do it here, just under a fascist moniker. Do you understand? And it's also, it's unbelievably silly to say, oh, the DSA wants to both abolish police and also simultaneously have secret police. Which is it? Are they deeply unserious? Do they want to abolish? Are they very scary and authoritarian? Are they anarchistic or are they authoritarian? Which is it? Very stupid. None of it makes sense. This is a train wreck for the Democratic Party. Victor Davis Hanson complaining about it as well. I mean, Sean Hannity promoting James Carville, socialist nightmare. More and more every damn night they're talking about DSA is scary, Hasan is scary, AOC is scary. Let's look at one of the establishment. Let's look at establishment Democrat railing against their socialist counterparts. It's the same fucking nightly show, day in, day out. We just have to keep pushing through this, and like I said, we have to become undeniable. Just do not back down. Do not actually concede on your opposition's framing on this issue. Do not. Okay? Support your comrades. Support your friends. Support those who are ideologically closest to you, whether they are to your left or to your right. Okay? Do not concede. We have to be unbroken. We have to be unbowed. And we will become undeniable.
of his life obsessively hating all things President Trump, washed up Democratic.
Going back to what you were saying about Biden, you called the shoe bag in 2020.
You're a phony and hypocrite.
I criticized Barack Obama throughout his entire presidency, and I criticized Hillary Clinton as well. I am not a hypocrite.
We're gonna.
What the fuck? This just bricked my PC. This TikTok bricked my PC, dude. What the hell is going on? Uh-oh.
You look like you're a phony and hypocrite.
I criticize.
Okay, here it is. Larry Elder. This is from my debate with Larry Elder. Here, this is all the way back in this debate is from, I think it's from 2019, 2018.
Barack Obama throughout his entire presidency, and I criticized Hillary Clinton as well. I am not a hypocrite.
We're
afraid.
We're going to talk about another issue now,
Medicare for all.
Are you kidding me? Which is the
and you're a libertarian.
You
want government to control medicine?
Let's talk about another issue, which is
that's insane.
Which is the issue of the Democratic primary now. This week we found out who are the 20 candidates that are going to be making it up onto the debate stage. This is a list of all 20 of them. By the way, all of them that have come on the issue are on the debate stage. So just candidates, good idea to come on the show. Sadly, for the candidates that are goose eggs, Steve Bullock, Mike Gravel, Wayne Nessum, and Seth Moulton, none of them met the criteria. I know many of our viewers are crying over that.
They will be missed.
Mike Gravel is an entertaining guy.
Where do you guys see the state of the race? Because I think you both might agree on something. Neither of you like Joe Biden.
Well, I'm not a fan of any of them.
Yeah.
Me either, except for Bernie. Maybe
do you like Elizabeth Warren?
Maybe I'll vote for Elizabeth Warren, but it's definitely the second best.
So if
option.
Joe Biden got the nomination and is running against President Trump, you would not vote for him?
I don't know. I've honestly considered moving up into the mountains and living an anarcho-primitivist lifestyle if Joe Biden becomes the Democratic nominee. I think Trump has a chance of defeating Joe Biden. But worse than that, even if Joe Biden wins, I think we go back to business as usual politics here in America. And next time around, it's not going to be Donald Trump. It's actually going to be an ideologically minded fascist, not a proto-fascist who kind of succeeded somehow. And
you have to remember, this is predating COVID, by the way. Yeah, this is before COVID. Obviously, the calculation shifted after COVID, but so it's not. Yeah, it's pre-COVID. But the point I made remains. And I was right. I just thought it wouldn't be Donald Trump, but Donald Trump came back far worse than ever before.
So if Joe Biden got the nomination and is running against President Trump, you would not vote for him?
I don't know. I've honestly considered moving up into the mountains and living an anarcho-primitivist lifestyle if Joe Biden becomes the Democratic nominee. I think Trump has a chance of defeating Joe Biden. But worse than that, even if Joe Biden wins, I think we go back to business as usual politics here in America. And next time around, it's not going to be Donald Trump. It's actually going to be an ideologically minded fascist, not a proto-fascist who kind of succeeded somehow and fooled Americans for long enough to get into a position of power.
Yeah, people yelled at me at the time because I said I would become an anarcho-primitivist, which is obviously a fucking joke.
But an actual terrifying leader.
Oh, my goodness. There was just a poll in Gallup, and they looked at Donald Trump ideologically. 17% believed that he was too conservative. 18% thought George W. Bush was too conservative. 38% think that Donald Trump's views are just right. 36% thought George W.'s views were just right. 39% thought both of them were too conservative. So the people perceive Donald Trump and George W. Bush to be almost mirror images ideologically. But I hear all this stuff about Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party, turned it into a party of cult. It's not true. People perceive them to be ideologically identical.
I agree with you on that. I 100% agree with you. I think and we talked about this outside, Donald Trump is a perfectly sound Republican, but also George W. Bush was a war criminal. So I don't like George W. Bush either.
All right, let's take a break.
War criminal.
Let's take a break. Let's let everybody cool down a little bit.
Remember?
Up next, we're going to talk about another issue that brings people together, the issue of homelessness here in California.
Yeah. It's cooking even back then, baby. When is your face going to grow back? I miss it already. Just get used to it, okay? You will get used to it eventually. If you close your eyes and listen to that guy Glaze Trump, and that sounds like Rubio. Denying Bush being a war criminal is insane. You mean saying Bush is a war criminal is insane, right? Because that's what he was doing. Because I said George W. Bush and Donald Trump are aligned in many respects, and that's a bad thing because George Bush was bad and he was a war criminal. I think you were wrong about the Trump cult part. What do you mean?
Strategist, my old pal, James Carville, has now discovered a much more pressing matter in his own front yard. Take a look.
These people are paternalistic, and it's a bunch of overeducated little white turds who think they know more than other people know.
He's literally talking about himself here. It's so funny. This is what establishment Democrats are. Overly educated, paternalistic white turds for the most part that masquerade as though they're like they masquerade. Yeah, this is the bed that James Carville sleeps in with a Dick Cheney operative, by the way, his wife. He, literally sleeping with the opposition. That's number one. Number two. I don't know why he's just doing these from a increasingly more ridiculous outlet. Looks like he's in a casket already. Who's the skeleton? Is James Carville, Bill Clinton advisor, campaign manager.
And they know what's wrong, and they're gonna go and then you got they're talking about indicting Netanyahu, and that the problem is you have a candidate, a DSA candidate in New York saying we should be against interracial dating. Let me tell you something. These people, and these are to all my black friends and people like me, they think they know more than you do. They think their history is more glorious than yours. They think that Lenin was a more glorious human being than Martin Luther King or Frederick Douglass. That's what they really think.
Where's this James been, by the way?
What do you mean, where's this James been? He's always been this fucking right-wing asshole. What the hell are we talking about? So with MLK, he was a DSA, he was a Democratic Socialist, so he definitely was like somewhat anti-communist, even though he was pro Ho Chi Minh. Okay. As far as Frederick Douglass goes, I wonder. Frederick Douglass. I wonder what Frederick Douglass is. I don't know what his opinion was on the growing, because like the Republican Party in its formation, at its inception was created to abolish chattel slavery in the South and wage slavery in the North. So the Republican Party in its formation was like far more radical than it, and its contemporary example. Obviously, they fought to abolish slavery and won, but the Republican Party in its initial formation was certainly not what the Republican Party has become now. And this is something that people often forget. So, or they just, they kind of don't even think about this at all. And of course, Karl Marx was very fond of Abraham Lincoln.